hear me, I think. Welcome to our joint presentation today at tcworld conference. I would like to give you a word of warning beforehand. Actually, we had a first version of our presentation that only had 2 slides. The first one was ask ChatGPT what is the perfect metadata model for Danfoss and how to implement it. The second slide was thank you very much. Turned out that didn't work. So we ended up with a lot of more slides for you. So please bear with us when we give you this presentation about how to develop a standard-based metadata model for Danfoss. And
all right. We just started with a little introduction of ourselves here. So my name is Holger Thater. I'm working at Danfoss Power Solutions. Some information about Danfoss. So Danfoss is a global company, as you can see, and quite all over the world. And this is what we are producing. So these are frequency converters that are used for multiple purposes to control motors in all kinds of application. So from very small to very big products. And something about me. So I've been around quite a long time in TCOM. So since 1990, actually, I started in TCOM. And currently I'm the team lead of the technical communication team at Danfoss Drives, located in Denmark and south of Denmark. And we are creating the product information for all our product lines. And we are having like a global team that does that. And we are handling the translations, terminology management, so everything related to TCOM, to our manuals. Apart from that, I'm the vice president of TCOM Denmark, a country organization of TCOM, and a member of the Digital Data Chain Consortium. So,
yeah. Okay, my name is Frank Ralf. I work as a senior technical consultant for Parson, which is a small consulting company from Germany. We are mainly based in Hamburg, but have offices in other German towns as well. We provide consulting services for all aspects of knowledge management for our customers, and Parson is also a member of the iiRDS Consortium, and we are certified iiRDS consultants. I think you can go on with the main presentation.
You want to? No? Okay, good. Yeah, so we wanted to give you a short background. Why are we here together, right? So what have we done, actually? What have we done, Frank? Oh, my goodness. So just to tell a little bit of the Danfoss background, where we came from when it comes to technical writing. So we had some legacy systems here, and you can see all the red spots here are the ones that caused us a lot of pain. So the system we were using is a Teamcenter CMS, and yeah, there was a lot of issues for us. It's client-server based, which is kind of a pain to maintain. The versioning was quite inconsistent and so on. There are a lot of issues. There was almost no metadata for the content, and it was not mobile friendly, so we were not able to produce a mobile friendly output of our content. And it was all based on PDF, right? So no other output than PDF, at least for us. So that's why we switched to another system. That's the successor of the previous one, TechPub Studio. Still Teamcenter based, and you can see there's a little bit of green here, but still a lot of red. Still client server architecture, which our IT hated, as you can imagine. yeah, still we had some things that we wanted to do that we couldn't do. So like review and proofreading contributors in the system and so on. And we were dependent on the supplier for everything because it was no knowledge in our team in that area and so on. It was quite complex. And again, the exposure of digital content did not really work. So there was no sufficient API to do this. So again, after some years, like 8 years, we switched to another system, which I will not tell you now, but later. Cliffhanger. Okay, so what is the motivation for the change, right? So you probably saw already. So we had some pain points here. Our documentation is quite unspecific because we are making it on product line level. And the user experience is very inconsistent because the reuse was kind of limited until now between the product lines. So a lot of redundancy. And still the lack of digital content delivery. Our stakeholders don't really accept that anymore, that we can't really provide something. And our OEM customers as well, because they wanted to reuse our content. And a big pain point for us is the findability of content, because you have to browse our webpage and find PDFs, and then first you have to guess which of the 350 PDFs is the right one. So not very good. So that means we set up a digital content delivery strategy to enable our customers to find the information they need in a more fast and easy way. So not going into everything, I think it's quite clear. So these are our 4 main goals here. So that we want to go to kind of no-touch processes from content creation to content delivery without all these manual processes we have today. And we want to integrate the external contributors in our R&D organization because they are currently decoupled and only deliver via mail or PDF or whatever. Not good. And findability is a big thing. And so we wanted to provide more unit-specific information, that the customer doesn't need to dig through the whole manual to find out which configuration do I have, because our products are highly configurable. And last but not least, and that's where Parson comes into play, we wanted to base everything as much as we can on standards. That's why we decided to make DITA the standard for our content structure. And we wanted to, and that's the new step that we introduced, we wanted to have a metadata system as well that is based on a standard, and that's why we choose iiRDS for that. And and we need to deliver for our customers standard documentation packages like VDI 2770, and before that we had to do everything manually on this. Yes. You can see some use cases here that we wanted to support, right? So we wanted the user to enable them to find the content bits that we are today using for producing our manual, so like topic-based. And the metadata should help guide there. So I'm not going into that, but I think it's probably, I can imagine that a lot of you have the same use cases. Okay. So that's why we switched over from this TechPub Studio to a new CMS, and we had I'm just listing some of the criteria that we defined because we figured out it was quite obvious that our new CCMS needed to facilitate this. Otherwise, if the content is not produced appropriately and in a system that would allow exposure of the content, you have a problem right from the beginning. So, the switch from document-based to topic-based, we have already achieved with the last system. So that helped us in that sense. The enrichment of content with metadata was something we have achieved with the last system as well. So that was not really new, but now having metadata to support the digital exposure of topics, for example. Yes, and we wanted to definitely have a standard API so that we could actually get our content out of the system in an easy way. And we wanted to have the R&D guys in so that they can contribute in our system, so integrate them in our workflow. And there again, the standard-based metadata taxonomies, so that we wanted to establish DITA we already had. And we definitely wanted to go away from this client-server thing. We wanted to have a cloud-based system, an SAS system, with a web-based client. Yeah, I'm not going into details here, but you can see here, it took quite a while, right? So from 2020, second half of 2020, to kind of middle of this year, it took us to take the decision and to do the first steps. So if you are planning something like that, really take your time, because it needs a lot of time to proper think about it and do the right selection, which I hope we have done. Yes. And you can see we decided in the end for IXIASOFT CCMS because for us it was the system closest to DITA, and kind of after our workshop was the system that came closest to what we wanted. So now there's the slide I promised you earlier. So you can see, so that this is built on hope, right? So that there's why there's a lot of green here. So not going into that, but so I hope that it will fulfill the requirements that were read before, so that it will be a solid base for what we want to do in digital content delivery. So, yeah, not reading through that, but yeah, I think you can see that for us, I think it should fit our bill. So and how did we get started? So when we decided that we wanted to build our metadata model on the standard, that's when we chose to build it on iiRDS, because we were thinking, why building kind of a proprietary metadata structure if there is already a standard that actually defines a lot of it? And we figured out that I think the basic metadata is actually already defined there. We just needed to make specific extensions. So that was the goal here. So you can see here again, it took a little bit time as well. So, so we started like middle of 2022 together with Parson on a first support project, and we applied for it for this TCOM funding, and we were accepted, and that's why we started then quite soon after that in summer of 2022, and were able to finish the first iiRDS project like in the end of the year, last year. And we presented already a little bit of it in the Nordic TechCom, and now here. So we wanted to show you what we did here. Yes, and we are currently at the end of the second project already, where we kind of looked into the technical implementation of the iiRDS metadata model in our CCMS. And again, for that one, we applied and we got the funding for it. So that was very nice. Actually, my boss liked that as well, as you can imagine, that some of the costs were covered.
Okay.
All right. Hand over to Frank.
Thanks. So you see, there had already been a lot of work done before Parson joined this project when we came into it for the metadata modeling based on iiRDS. So, and it was the scope of the project wasn't very large, so it was a rather small project. So the scope was also limited. What we wanted to achieve was to determine the metadata candidates, and the metadata requirements for the metadata that is relevant for variant management and content delivery. And we wanted to evaluate the IXIASOFT content management system, how it best could support the developed metadata model. So the deliverables were the metadata model, and first recommendations how to implement this in IXIASOFT, but we were not, we didn't aim to implement the whole thing within this limited project. So before going into the details of this actual project, just let me give you a short recap of iiRDS for those who don't know or haven't heard much about iiRDS yet. I will go over these slides very, very quickly because we have enough opportunities during this conference to dig deeper into iiRDS if you want to. So iiRDS is this international standard for intelligent information request and delivery. It's jointly developed by a consortium, and a lot of content management providers and software providers are members of this consortium. And why choose iiRDS, or how fits iiRDS into the landscape of intelligent and structured content? And you see here, DITA, XML, and iiRDS are a perfect match if you want to provide structured content enriched with standard-based metadata and deliver that to other systems as well. So iiRDS is a rather complex or a large standard because it has to fit a lot of use cases. What we did when choosing the parts that we need for the Danfoss project, we looked at the main iiRDS classes that would be useful for us. That were the administrative metadata, the functional metadata, product metadata, then the information type, and on the lowest level, the information unit. And we also had to add some extra domain-specific metadata classes from the iiRDS standard that are not part of the core standard, but are additional standards, additional domains, and these were the machinery and the software domain, because they were needed for Danfoss. Okay, just a very quick overview so that you get an idea about the main classes. The information type, for example, in iiRDS is strongly modeled after the DITA content types that you probably know. For example, task, concept, reference. You have classes for the document type, for the information subjects, technical overview, and the like. You have product metadata, which is, of course, very important for a company like Danfoss with a large product offering. That could be product variant, the components of the products, and so on. Then you have the functional metadata. That's also important because in the machinery context. So, and why would you choose a standard for exchanging or modeling metadata? And I have here a slide with some example. These are basically the same information, but in totally different implementations in XML. And iiRDS provides a very good base for aligning this and consolidate that metadata. By just choosing the right classes, you get standard-based metadata and could fit your specific metadata model and map this to iiRDS class. And that, if the other side also does this, it's very easy to exchange documentation based on that metadata. Okay, so now on to developing the actual metadata model. Some remarks about the general approach beforehand. The general recommendation for everything you do with metadata is keep it as simple as possible, because if you look at iiRDS, it's rather large standard, and if you look at the available product information on the, for example, on the Danfoss websites, it can be overwhelming. So start small, keep it simple, and build up on that. Then you should actually only use that metadata or model metadata that you actually need for the variant management or for content delivery. And what was said already is use standards as much as possible. And if possible, use the standard out of the box. But if that is not possible, then extend the standard if that is needed. But don't invent the wheel the third time or even more often. So what's the process, or what was the process of developing this metadata model for Danfoss, or developing a metadata model in general? The first thing you want to do is gather as much input as you possibly can. And input sources could be the metadata you use with the current CCMS solution you already have. You could look at your technical documentation, whether there are candidates for metadata. A very good source is the product information that's possibly already available in your company in the product information management system or product lifecycle management system. You could do interviews with stakeholders, and you could just look at the online shop of the company or the website and see what's there available, because that is the metadata that might be used for content delivery. Another general recommendation is if you want to write down your requirements for the metadata use, then keep this requirements as close to the user as possible. That's why we, in most cases, use user stories for writing down those requirements for metadata use. And so we don't have any technical implementation already in mind at that step of the process. Okay, so the first step we did was analyzing the input. And you see here, this is an example of from the website, the online shop of one of the product lines of Danfoss that we used as an example, the IC7. And if you look at the website, you get more than 700 hits. So it's a very complex product line with a lot of different components, metadata, and parameters that distinguish the products from each other. So this is already a way to get an impression what might be useful for the user, for content delivery, and also for variant management metadata. Then you can have a look at, or we had a look at the already existing information, the current documentation, and also information that came out of the product information systems for metadata candidates. And we looked at the metadata used in the current CCMS. Holger already told that during the development or the stages from one content management to the other, they already implemented some metadata, but with the current TechPub Studio solution, there was metadata available, but that wasn't really used because the assignment of the metadata was not mandatory. So, and it wasn't, in all cases, available. The metadata wasn't always there. It wasn't always consistent. But this is another source for possible metadata candidates. So now, how do you go about actually modeling or creating the metadata model? Some remark about the tools. You probably have what we recommend for doing such metadata modeling together with your customers is to keep also the tools as simple as possible. And so we would rather use a low-level tool like a mind map tool instead of a full-fledged ontology editor like, for example, Protégé, because that provides a lot of advantages. We implemented this metadata model as a mind map so that you can use labels for marking certain nodes in your metadata model as relevant for variant management, for example, or content delivery. You can use nodes on the mind map for discussing or for adding comments or discussing certain aspects of your metadata model. And so this is a living document that grows during the project and also serves as documentation of the process and the end result of your metadata model. So how do you go about of creating the initial metadata model? The first thing is you identify the relevant iiRDS classes that you want your metadata model based on. Then you map your metadata to those iiRDS classes. And as I've already told, use as much the already existing metadata classes in iiRDS as much as possible. If you really need to add another metadata element, the best thing is to use to look for a suitable class in the iiRDS standard and add a new instance to the already existing class. If that is not possible, then you could create your custom class with custom instances. But you should really only do that if there's no suitable standard class available. And I think I've put this one in bracket. You might already have some implementation limitations in mind that you could consider at this step of the process, but we recommend to keep the complete modeling process as much implementation independent as possible. Because in this case, the implementation or the content management system was already decided upon, but you might switch in the future, you might have to add other components, so it's better you have a metadata model that is independent from any technical implementation. So when we did this for Danfoss, we ended up you see here, this is a small, only one branch of the complete mind map we created for the product variants for the IC7 product family. We had another branch of the components that are relevant for the product line. And if you do all this, then you end up with a metadata model that is, and with all the metadata that is relevant for content delivery, for your variant management. Then you can go about and implement this in your system. Now some remarks about the actual implementation of this metadata model. No, it had already been decided to use IXIASOFT, a DITA-based component content management system. So the first thing you have to, or one of the things you have to do is to identify the metadata support of the content management system that you use and whether this supports the metadata that you want, model that you want to implement. So what we did, we looked at the taxonomies feature that IXIASOFT provides and quickly decided that it was not powerful enough for this complex metadata model that we wanted to implement. So we ended up using two other features, powerful features of IXIASOFT, the dynamic release management, and connected with that the hierarchical libraries that IXIASOFT provides to implement part of the metadata model. For example, the product hierarchy could very well implement it using these features of IXIASOFT. But we also did some implementation or customization and implementation of the metadata in DITA. We created, for example, a special map type for Danfoss, the so-called delivery map. We specialized a number of elements and sub-elements. And what we also did was we added some profiling attributes for filtering the content. So we ended up creating new profiling attributes, which allowed us to support the authors, the technical authors, by providing a list of allowed values with the DITA subject scheme maps that can also be or are also implemented in the publishing features of IXIASOFT. So much about the development of the metadata model and first implementation steps and recommendations. And now back to Holger for the current status of the project.
Yeah, where are we? So you've seen there has been a lot of work done and a lot of involvement of the whole team. That's another recommendation I can give you. If you want your technical writers to accept what you are developing, involve them very early, because otherwise they might be a little bit reluctant to use the stuff, right? But if they were involved in creating it and discussing it, it's a good thing to do. So where are we? So we have the metadata model, at least, let's say, version 1 developed. Will probably be ongoing, extensions and so on. So the product variants tree was the most important one for us, because that one we need to support, for example, our web page on the long term, that we can expose on the web page for the model codes of the product. So, and the content libraries are set up for the different products that we are producing for. And we focused obviously on the high runner first. Another recommendation, don't do everything at once. Prioritize, because there's a lot of work behind to then migrate content and so on. So the publishing style sheet is now online since last week. So it's working quite well. So, and it is using the metadata. So you see it's important to define the metadata first before you define the publishing, because the publishing style sheet refers to metadata elements. If you, for example, want to expose your document number in the footer, or your company name somewhere, or whatever, so you need to have the elements in place that you can map to, right? So that was important, and we are currently applying metadata while we are doing migration. So the DITA model is defined, and we have documented it. Another recommendation, document what you are doing, because especially as this process takes a while, you tend to forget, oh, what did we decide back then? I don't know. Let's look back in the mails or whatever, or meeting. So document as you go. So if you take decisions, how you want to use metadata and how you want to use elements, document it in a style guide. We did it in a very simple way. We just documented it in a OneNote. That was okay. And we will at some point make it, beautify it a little bit, but for us that worked quite well because we had every writer contribute in that, and that was very easy to do. The delivery maps, Frank just mentioned, they are created as part of the content migration. So the technical writers create those, and currently we are producing only PDFs from them, but later on, that's why we went with delivery maps. We want to use them for other content delivery channels as well. Yeah, and the subject scheme maps and the DRM libraries Frank mentioned already. Yeah, I think this is an important part. I want to elaborate a little bit on the impact on the technical writers. So you need the buy-in of your team. Don't put yourself in an ivory tower, develop something, then here you are, right? Use it. That will probably not work very well. So in the previous system, we only knew, for example, we were already using DITA, but it was more, people did not know a lot about DITA. They were just told in the style guide which elements to use for bulleted lists and so on. So the thinking was not structured in a way. So that is something we really needed to learn here. And so that means we needed to learn much more about usage of DITA because the IXIASOFT CCMS is very close to DITA, right? So you really need to understand, and it brings you a lot of benefit later on when you do a content delivery. So, and the DRM system structure is something we needed to get used to as well, but it has a lot of benefits, as Frank already said. So I'm not going into details there. So the writers know how to create the maps. That's obviously important when you migrate. So we migrate based on currently on the documents, because that gives us some structure. So we kind of are migrating the high runner documents first, that we are expecting updates to come soon. This is how we prioritized. So that's why obviously they needed to understand that. And yeah, there was a huge challenge, as you can imagine. You cannot put yourself away and say, hey, company, the TechCom team is on CCMS implementation vacation for 4 months or so. Come back in 4 months, then we will be ready. No, we needed to obviously support the running business, right? That's obvious. So that was a big challenge because we sometimes need to work in both systems, the old one, the new one. And then we did some things I'm not proud of to support the operating, even tweaking PDFs, but sometimes you have to do something strange to just keep going. So that was really a challenge and put quite a burden on the writers, as you can imagine. And and for some while, we were only able to migrate content, to create content, but we didn't have the style sheet ready because the metadata was not totally ready and the style sheet was under development. So the people could not see what they were migrating. So that was a challenge. That was definitely for 2 months. We were only migrating without the ability to really publish in a proper way. We could publish, but only the basic implementation. So that was a challenge. But in parallel, we needed to develop the translation workflow as well. Another recommendation, think of the translation, how you handle that. For example, we have multi-language documents. Yeah, you really have to think, what metadata do we need? How do we want to make the process? Test it out with the translation vendor, right? Yes. But what we found out is that the writers learned a lot from each other. So it kind of put them together as a team. So because everyone was involved. So that was really good learning experience for them. Yeah, I think. So what is now the future plan? Obviously, I mentioned digital content delivery. So that is obviously on the agenda, that we want to develop the publication channels to expose our topics finally. And we have a Danfoss My Drive Assistant. It's a troubleshooting. I don't want to call it chatbot. It's a KI-based solution that helps customers find information when they have error messages and so on. And that's fed from the content from our CMS. Currently manual, and we want to obviously connect that so that whenever the topics are updated, that the troubleshooting bot can access that. Integration in our software tools. The software engineers, they are currently decoupled, I would say. So their help they implement in their software tools they create themselves, and we just review them, which is not ideal. Why not having it in our system and do all the processes, including translation and so on? So that's the plan. And then the big plan is to have this content delivery portal where we can really have a front end to our customers where they can find the information on topic base. So that is on the radar for next year. So step by step. Yes, and our goal is that we need to facilitate product instance-based documentation. That means not on a product line, but on the serial number of the unit. And so that's the next thing to look into. VDI 2770, I mentioned already. We have customers requesting that from us, meaning providing instance-based documentation. It's not an easy thing to do, but we have laid the groundwork, but that will still require something. We can do it, but currently with a lot of manual intervention. And then the integration to our PIM system, which will hold our product type hierarchy and product attributes, and our PLM system to get the life cycle information in. So you can see there's still something on the bill. Yes, and that's already kind of the end. So as I told you about the second iiRDS project, we are almost done with it. And obviously, you've seen we have a lot of plans. And we are planning to kind of give an update on the status next year on the Nordic TechCom and the tcworld. So I think we have 2 minutes. So are there any urgent questions? And before that, I'll just point you to the feedback here. Please give us feedback. Thank you.
Hi,
yes.
Thank you for the good presentation. I have a question for you. You mentioned the profiling attributes, but I didn't quite get what they were used for. Could you quickly explain?
They're used for filtering DITA content. And if you see, we have DITA-val files for that that are connected to the publication maps, and they are also part of the IXIASOFT structure. They managed there. Is that enough?
No.
No. Well, do you have these profiling attributes in DITA for, well, they call it profiling. You can do two things, either mark content based on these profiling attributes, or you can filter content so that you say, for this, I add this, for example, there's a filtering attribute out of the box of the audience. This is only for specialists, this is for beginners.
Okay.
And then you can have 2 content snippets in your document, but only when you publish it, only one part of it will be actually published based on this
depending on the role.
Depending on the role, yes.
Okay, now I get it. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I think we don't have more time, but we are at the conference all 3 days, right? So feel free to reach out and just ask more questions. We are very happy to answer them as good as we can. Thank you very much for your attend.